Welcome everyone. Today we have a special episode and we are in one of the most exclusive penthouse here in Bangkok, Thailand. This is an exclusive listing of Richmond's. And today I have the pleasure of being with Alex. He's the sales director and he's going to giving us some information, some insights about the Thai market. So thank you very much for being here, Alex.
No problem, Pablo. Nice to be here.
For me, it's a pleasure meeting you and having all this information about how the market is working here in real estate, especially in the luxury. Mm-hmm. And the reason also why we're here is because we saw that Richmond has more than 20 years of experience. You have sold hundreds, if not thousands, properties, and also because of the opinions that you have gathered through all these years of your clients. Said so, I think that it will be interesting to first have an overview of the market. So my first question will be, how will you describe the state of luxury real estate market in Bangkok in 2024?
Okay, interesting. I think certainly COVID definitely changed things up. I think depending on what market segment you were looking at during that time, the behavior of buyers was different.
Okay.
Particularly the ultra-luxury market, it seemed to excel compared to perhaps the entry-level or the mid-level market. I think that was primarily driven from lack of supply. When you're looking at the ultra-luxury range within the city, there are limited options. The hotel-branded residences are one part of that. Perhaps we can explore that in a little bit more detail later. But lack of supply was certainly a primary driver for the ultra-luxury segment. We're definitely now in a post-COVID market, so the biggest change for that has certainly been the announcement of a lot of new launches for the ultra-luxury side, which perhaps hadn't been there in the market for the last almost 3 or 4 years. There was a real delay in developers launching new projects, but there's some really exciting stuff on the horizon that's particularly going to be launching towards the end of the year. So it's an exciting time for this side of the market.
That's something really interesting that then we can talk about it. But before going there, I was wondering about which are the trends that you're seeing in property demand and also in prices during these years.
Yeah, I think, again, just to sort of go back on a post-COVID market, I mean, during the COVID time, there were no new launches, essentially, from all segments of the market. Okay. And I think a change in buyer behavior since then has been the new launches that have come up, particularly in the central business district areas, have done exceptionally well. There's been a new project on Wireless Road called Noble Embassy by a Noble developer, joint venture with Hong Kong Land. And they sold out to the foreign quota of that one within 6 months, which is very unusual for what we've seen over the last few years. And also the entry-level side of the market. New launches, the Aspire Hoi Kwong comes to mind, and that one sold out off-plan within 2 days. And that's over 1,500 units in that project. So perhaps there's more of a shift now towards new launches. Just after COVID, there was a trend where perhaps there were projects in the city which were finished but had some unsold inventory. So there were some discounts perhaps in the market, either in the form of furniture packages, transfer fees, or sort of cash discounts. Those were quite common strategies. That's definitely finished now. I think if you bought at that time, it could have been interesting for finished projects. And now the market's moving more towards the new development launches.
Okay. And is there any special developments that people are looking for? I'm talking about now foreigners.
Yeah. In the luxury segment. Anything special? Wow, I think
brand residences maybe.
Yeah, branded residences is a really important part of the market here. I think, you know, they have been in the market for a little while now. If you look at places like Sukhothai and St. Regis, but over the last sort of few years, you know, the Four Seasons on the river, the Banyan Tree, the Mandarin Oriental, and importantly, Ritz-Carlton. This one here is probably the most famous, as we're located in one of the most iconic buildings in the city, Mahanakorn Building. It's mostly been sort of hotel-branded residences. However, there are some now other branded residences. For example, I don't know if you've seen the news that Porsche have partnered with Ananda.
I've heard of that.
So that's drawn quite a lot of international attention. So it'll be interesting to see if that concept gets replicated moving forwards.
Definitely. Actually, right now we are in Ritz-Carlton. Where is the neighborhood that we're located in, and also which are the most demanded neighborhoods for foreign buyers?
Yeah, sure. So we're located in the Sathorn district. So people call it the Silom Sathorn. There are 2 roads that are parallel to each other. We're connected to Cheongnan-si BTS, so that's part of the green BTS line. We have two of them. We have one in Sukhumvit and one that goes through Saton. This is one CBD part of the city. Bangkok's quite unusual because we don't really have like a downtown area or a particular CBD area. We have quite a few, which are sort of spread across the city. This area particularly is known for having a lot of bank headquarters, a lot of embassies, a lot of sort of middle management type for offices around here. And then when you go more towards the Silom side, it's much more sort of walkable. You've got a lot of green spaces, a lot of bars, restaurants, a bit more of a sort of older town feel. If you compare that with, say, Sukhumvit, which is a very popular district in the city as well. So Sukhumvit is a road that runs through the center of the city, essentially, and goes all the way to Cambodia. That's a very popular destination for foreigners, mostly because you have essentially everything there. You've got all your amenities, you've got, you know, shopping malls, hospitals, international schools, you know, bars, restaurants, parks, which are very limited in Bangkok, as you might be aware.
Yeah.
We're very limited on our parks in the city, so having something quite close to there is an absolute bonus. So you've got, to summarize, you've got the Silom Saton, you've got Sukhumvit. Another area you might consider is Rama 9, so they call that the new CBD area. That's been very, very popular with the Chinese and Myanmar clients. Chinese embassies based up there. You've got some quite famous shopping malls. You've got Fortune Town, Central Rama 9, the Thailand Cultural Centre. And then last of all, you've got the Riverside area, which is probably the latest up-and-coming part of the city. It's quite unusual for a city of the size of Bangkok to have quite an underdeveloped riverside. You know, normally in a more established market, the riverside would be absolutely prime. It would be very, very developed. But in Bangkok, that's only just started to sort of come up again now. I think that was primarily turbocharged by the entrance of these hotel-branded residences, places like Four Seasons, Mandarin, Banyan Tree, all of those are located along the central part of the riverside. So, you know, Bangkok's a very sprawling city. It's huge, but I would summarize it into those four locations.
Okay, awesome. Hearing you talking, I mean, you can see clearly that you have been living for not months, but probably years, right?
Correct, yes.
How many years have you been living here in Bangkok?
I've been here nearly 7 years now.
7 years.
Yeah.
Probably in these 7 years, you have been working in the real estate market?
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so you have probably seen many mistakes done by foreign buyers when buying here a property, because it's not that easy, right?
True, it's a different system here. And of course, it depends on what sort of property you're buying. So, you know, the buying process is very different if you're buying a new development that's off plan or under construction, if it's a new development that is finished, if it's a resale unit, or if it's what is called flipping a contract, which means if you buy off plan and then you wish to resell to someone else, you've got four very different sort of buying processes.
Okay, and which are the legal restrictions that someone that is looking to buy a home here should be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, foreigners are restricted to buying condominiums freehold here in Thailand.
Okay, can we explain the difference, or if you want, we can do it later, about freehold and leasehold, which I think that it might be very interesting.
Sure, so the 1979 Condominium Act allowed foreigners to own just condominiums freehold. So the word condominium, it can mean certain things in different countries.
Yeah.
So I'm from the UK, so we would call them flats or apartments.
Yeah.
But an apartment has a different meaning here to a condominium.
Which one is it?
Okay, so a condominium is a private owner of a unit. An apartment is an entire building which is owned by one person. So they're sort of long-term rents. So they're almost like a halfway house between a hotel and a condo.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a little semantic reason. So foreigners have the same ownership title as a local when they purchase condominiums here.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I should point out leasehold. If you wanted to buy a house, for example, you can never own the land, so foreigners can't own landed property. However, you could lease the house for a certain amount of years. This concept is a little bit more common outside of Bangkok when you start going to the resort towns, such as Phuket or Hue Hin or something like that. To be honest, the land price is so expensive in Bangkok that most people are looking primarily for condominiums only.
Okay, and which are because you mentioned 4 different options, which are those that you think that a foreigner should consider when buying a property here? Which are those that are more attractive?
It really depends. I mean, a big part of it is if you're purchasing off plan, are the payment terms. So, you know, they depend on the developer, but a rough ballpark for a deposit is between 20 and 30%, and then you pay the rest on completion.
Okay.
So some people, they might want to split up their payments. It's not like other countries where you pay in installments depending on the sort of stage of the construction. Here it's quite straightforward. You just pay 2 or 3 times. As getting a loan here from local banks isn't possible. So, you know, that's one way of perhaps splitting up payments. That's for the new side of the market. Again, it depends on personal preference. You know, there's quite a difference between the newer condos and the older condos here. Don't forget, it's a relatively new market here. So an old condo is considered something that was built maybe in the 90s. You know, it's very, very different to Europe, where, you know, you're dealing with property that's hundreds of years old. So a lot of the new condos, they'll have, you know, all bells and whistles for the amenities. You know, you get your swimming pool, sauna, steam room, gym, golf room, kids room, cinema room, which you find mostly in the newer condos. The older ones, you tend to get a little bit more space, but they tend to be a bit more restrictive on amenities.
Okay, really interesting. And which is because I understand, and correct me please if I'm being mistaken, but that you need a visa in order to get here to Thailand. Is it right?
A visa?
Yeah, exactly.
It depends on your nationality.
Okay.
Like Europeans can get visa on arrival here.
Okay.
There's no visa requirement to purchase property. In fact, I would say 50% of our buyers are investment buyers, and they're not based in Thailand anyway.
Okay. But if you're looking to stay for the long term, then you should obtain one, right?
You can do if you want. I mean, there's no visa which is automatically tied to purchasing property here.
Okay.
There are a mixture of different visa options though. Long-term residency visa is a new visa, which is quite attractive. Also, the Thailand Elite visa is another attractive option, where essentially you pick a package. It's either 5, 10, 15, 20 years, depending on the price. And then, it's quite a streamlined system, so you don't need a visa anymore. You can't work on it, unfortunately.
Okay.
But you get a mixture of perks, you know, like fast track at the airport and things like that.
So there's not any property visa that you need to get in order to buy here a condo?
No, they're very welcoming here. It's very welcome to international market.
Talk about financial, because once you have decided that you want to invest here in Thailand, probably one of the things that you're going to start looking for, it's for financial options.
Sure.
And I know that it's something that might be struggling, especially if you are from the outside.
Yeah.
Can you give us some light on this matter?
Sure. I think firstly, something to point out is one of the rules here when you're purchasing as a foreigner is that funds need to be remitted as a foreign currency into Thailand. So as an example, if you're buying a new development building and you're from the US, what you would do is you would remit your US dollar or any foreign currency directly to the developer accounts. The receiving bank makes the change to the local currency here. And the reason they do that is so they can issue something called an FET, which is a foreign exchange transaction form. So that's basically part of the paperwork that we need at the land office to transfer the unit.
All right.
So that's a requirement for foreign buyers. If you're looking for financing within the country, firstly, I should say, if you're purchasing off plan, you have to wait until a month or 2 before the completion before you can start the loan process.
Okay.
So you can't take a loan out on the initial deposit, so you pay that first. As I briefly mentioned earlier, the local banks are quite limited when it comes to loaning to locals. I know that Kasikorn Bank has a connection in Hong Kong. If you're a Hong Kong resident, that's an option. For most people, they would be looking at banks like UOB. So you can get something called a UOB international loan, which is underwritten in Singapore. MBK is another option. Again, it depends on your profile, depending on sort of the offer you can get. But the loans are quite a bit more short term than perhaps we're used to in Europe, where you get sort of 30, 40, 50-year mortgages. Here it's much shorter. It's much more of a cash-driven market here.
Okay. The other day, I just remember that you mentioned that there was being some kind of changes in the regulation with the EFT.
The FET?
Yeah.
Not as far as we know yet. I know that
Okay.
there's been a bit of a clampdown from the government recently in the land offices. If we're dealing with particular markets or countries that perhaps have restrictions sending out money. So there's been a bit of a clampdown on that recently. But yeah, no, I don't think there's any change in the foreseeable for
Not
that
yet.
for now. Not yet, yeah.
All right, and because we have, now that we know how to, which are the different options that you have in order to get that financial, there's some things also that that you think that property or future homeowners should be aware of. For example, hidden costs. Are there any hidden costs that you should know before buying a property here in order to add?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, quite a good general rule of thumb is when you're purchasing property here, there are three main expenses to consider. Okay. So you have firstly, your unit price, your agreed sales price, and then you have what's called a transfer fee. So that's basically your land office tax. So that's 2% split 50-50 between the buyer and the seller, usually.
Okay.
And then you've got your maintenance fee cost. So that's your only ongoing cost, that's your yearly cost. So that covers things like your juristic staff, which is like your management building. It covers the cleaners, it covers the amenities, the day-to-day running of the condo, basically. Okay. Which you'll find is, incredibly good value compared to other countries. I hear that all the time, that it's very good value for money for the maintenance fees for what you get in Bangkok. And your third expense is what's called a sinking fund. So that's a one-time payment that basically just puts money in the pot of the condo. So for any larger works that need to be done in the future, such as changing the elevators or repainting the building or perhaps retarmacking the road, things where they don't normally want to be taking it out of the maintenance fee, they'll use it for that. For the older buildings, usually after about sort of as much as 15, 20 years, they might consider raising the common area fee. But it's usually very, very incremental, like sort of 5% is an average increase. It's very minimal. I know like some of the HOAs in the USA, they go up scary amounts, and it's, it scares a lot of people. But for here, it's a very, very manageable cost.
I ask you this because I know that there are many people that are looking exactly to buy a property here, and that's kind of information that maybe they are not looking, or maybe, they are probably interested in having. Also, I was wondering about which are the most common challenges that you have seen through these 7 years that people do struggle with when buying a property here as a foreigner.
I guess a big struggle or potential struggle that people have is if they're not based here. So, particularly during COVID, we had a lot of people who were buying from overseas, and finding someone they trust, I think, is a big part of it. Yeah. Hence why, at Richmond's we have a really great reputation. That's why we have clients come to us, because we're trusted. It's a little bit of a Wild West still here in Bangkok. You get some freelance agents and you get some big companies, and there's a real mixture of experiences perhaps that you can have. So I think aligning yourself with a trustworthy agency or agent is very important.
A whole new difference, right?
Yeah, especially because people putting their money without seeing something, or perhaps they need some guidance about the city or the market situation. I think that's an incredibly valuable thing that we can bring to foreign investors, which, as I said, makes up about 50% of our overall client base.
And talking about the figure of a real estate agency, can you tell us, because sometimes just people don't understand which is all the value that you are adding, right? Which will be like the process or the value, let's say, that you will add on when guiding someone to find their dream home here in Bangkok? Yeah, sure. So firstly, it's an incredibly dynamic market. There's stuff coming up all the time. Okay. And due to the nature of the market here, it's quite unusual for an agency to have exclusivity over a unit or a building. So what that means is that you get quite a few agencies and agents sort of marketing the same building or same project, and it can be
kind of complicated. So I think that having someone, as your first point of contact who can navigate basically what's real and what's not real is a great start. And then, the real value of the agent comes into negotiating the price for you, managing the bureaucracy here, managing the red tape, managing the land office. All of these things are still quite antiquated compared to other markets, I would say. And also managing like transfer, handover. We have a mixture of after sale services as well. So if you need the unit furnished, if you need it renovated, if you need a tenant, we can manage all that for you. So we like to keep the clients with us, for a long time after the sales transfer. We don't disappear by any means. So it's nice just to have a sort of longer term contact here.
Yeah, it's about building relationships,
yeah,
right?
Definitely, especially at this sort of price point as well. People trust you with a lot of money.
And a house that is purchased and at some point it's going to be sold, right? And
Sure.
if you do your job, then the higher chances you get also to
have
it again.
that's a bonus, yeah, definitely.
And in case, because that's sometimes it happens, right? Because if it's a bad or good decision, you never know, but people just decide to go, okay, no, I'm just going to do it by my own, which is sort of totally fine. But then you're probably going to find some red flags. Which are those that if people just decide to go by themselves, they should be aware of? I think
it depends if you're doing new build or resale. If it's new build, something, if you went by yourself, perhaps you're not aware of is looking at projects that have got what's called their EIA. So that's their environmental impact assessment. So that's like the final rubber stamp they need before building.
Okay.
So some projects they'll launch without having this final rubber stamp. So that means there could be a delay. It could be cancelled. It's good to get sort of opinions of people on the ground.
And is that legal? Like to start without having that?
You can sell without it, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then someone is going to buy it and then just realize that that's not.
It's quite unusual for that to happen here. It does happen where we get cancelled projects and things like that, but it's not very common. But that's just one example of perhaps you'd get your agent's advice and you want it to be finished ideally, and you want the timeline to be reasonable. I think that's also something to manage is, we can't predict the future, but, picking developers with good track records is normally a good start. And I think an agent can certainly help with that. And from the resale perspective, I think a lot of buyers, they are a little bit wary to send perhaps a 10% deposit to a stranger. Okay. When they buy the resale. So instead we operate like a company escrow account, so we keep the money safe for them while we manage the contracts for them. We either do that in-house or we outsource them with a buyer or seller lawyer. So we just offer that added level of protection for both parties, which you wouldn't get if they just went direct with each other.
It's about tranquility, right?
Yeah.
That you would just want to make sure that the property you're buying, everything, the process, not is going to be also agile, but also is going to be safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you are overseas.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking, you just mentioned we cannot predict the future, and 100% that's the thing. But if you have to have an outlook of how it's going to look, the luxury real estate market, because of the direction that is growing right now, what would you say in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think this year is definitely the start of another phase for the ultra luxury market. I know we touched on it earlier, but there was such a limited amount of new launches, like in the whole city at this sort of quality and price segment, and there are some really exciting things coming. One prime location is around the Lang Xuan or Lumpini area. So Lumpini Park is quite famous. It's in the middle of the city, and it typically has leasehold condominiums around the outside of the park, because it's owned by the Crown Property Bureau, which is part of the royal family. There are a mixture of freehold options which are coming up there soon. And they are definitely bullish about pricing, and they have good reason to. So there's one project on Lang Xuan called Scope Lang Xuan, which has sort of been the flagship new ultra luxury project in that area. And this year they sold the penthouse at 1 million baht per square meter, fully furnished. Wow. So that is
set the standard, right?
That's definitely big money. That's really big money. So I won't name any particular developers yet. You'll have to follow us for more on that one. But there are going to be more projects freehold within that area coming soon at the million baht expected per square meter.
Those are great news, but it also could happen, right? That this also could have a risk. Which would be, do you think the potential risk of these properties or these new buildings not being maybe sold, or because of the high demand that you're getting right now, you think that it's going to be balanced?
I think when it comes to the ultra luxury projects, a lot of the time you do have to wait until the project's finished. Because people want to assess the quality themselves. You know, when you're looking at lower budget stuff, people are much more happy to sort of make that, you know, weigh up those factors on, you know, price for early bird launch compared to sort of overall finish. But you have a general idea because you have track records of developers for more mass market things. For the ultra luxury, people tend to want to see the final project. That sort of goes along with the penthouse market here as well. We'll find that most of the penthouses we sold are completed only. And also a lot of the developers, they'll hold off selling until later. They'll try and build as much as buzz as possible, because the ultra luxury projects, they typically have a much lower unit density. So, you know, you might only have 150 units for a high-rise building, something like that. So, yeah, the sales have been pretty strong. I mean, this building demand is incredibly high, especially for rentals. It's very popular with families. Yeah, there's a lot to be optimistic for, I think, for the ultra luxury coming into next year.
Yes, definitely. This, what we were just describing, it has helped to become Bangkok one of the top, right, luxury real estate market destinations, or hotspots, better, I would say. And what do you think, just to end the podcast, what do you think that stands out Bangkok from the rest of other cities in Asia?
Oh, wow, interesting. Okay, it's an incredibly international city here, and you know, where we're located, Bangkok is a natural Southeast Asian hub for a lot of businesses. So, you know, a lot of businesses have their headquarters here. A lot of people come here to live and work, and also a lot of people come here as their second home. So it's an incredibly natural city to buy a second home if you do live in Southeast Asia, as an example. So, you know, we get a lot of buyers, particularly from Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, where the pricing here is still considered very attractive compared to their home, you know, their home countries.
Even though you have those prices per square meters, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I still think it's competitive, and they're looking long term often, these people. You know, it's either second home or they're moving here for retirement because the cost of living here is so low. You know, your money goes so much further. The amenities that you get, the service that you get, is pretty unmatched for the price still compared to these other regions.
So it should not only be seen as an opportunity investment, right, but also as a living, as a place to be living to people from different places, right? Yeah,
I mean, I'm interested to get your opinion. What do you think about the buzz when you walk around the town, right?
I'm not to be honest, I'm not a city person.
Oh, really?
but today in the morning I was thinking about that. Definitely, if I was looking, because I have already been visited many cities, and Bangkok is definitely one of those that because. All the different, right, in not only gastronomic, but also how the transport is, the infrastructure.
Yeah.
It also, it looks like there's having a boom, right? Because not only because of what I've seen, but also what I've heard of talking with different people that are looking here as expats. So I think that the mix of all those things makes Bangkok a really interesting place to be living.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget, it's still definitely a developing city.
Yeah.
You mentioned infrastructure. Like, the train system is such a great example of that. Like, 7 years ago, there was 3 or 4 different train lines in the city, and now there's 11 or 12. You know, it's really expanding. They're making the public transport far more accessible. You know, as the city expands, the center is still the center, is what I would say. So I think if you can get in early still and you know, purchase these prime central location projects such as this one at this price, long term it's looking very good.
Alex, it has been a pleasure to have you here and to be able to discuss all these things, because I think that it's really interesting to have someone that has been for this time, who is working with an international brand such as Richmond, and be able to give all these insights for people that might be looking for a property to buy. I think that it's just, it really works so much. So I really appreciate you
no problem.
having you here, and I hope that we can see you in the next episodes or in the next month.
Sure, let's do that. Thanks, Pablo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks.